All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Innovation Heroes, where we tap into the minds of innovation leaders from around the world to get inspiration to drive our own innovation goals. I'm your host, Adam Olson, and I want to thank you all for tuning in today. We're very excited about this episode with special guest Nichola Bates, head of global accelerators and innovation programs at Boeing and managing partner at Aerospace Xcelerated, to discuss how she goes about finding innovative companies to partner with and how her programs support these companies to drive innovation at Boeing and in the aerospace industry. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Boeing, but if you aren't, they're the world's largest aerospace company and leading provider of commercial airplanes, defense, space, and security systems. So welcome, Nick. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on your background and what led you to your exciting role at Boeing?
Sure. Thanks, Adam, and thanks for having me today. So my role at Boeing, it's fair to say it was never a career plan. I was with a startup previously, and it really it was one of those opportunities that came along. I'd never had any corporate experience before, and I thought, hey, let's give it a go. I do get asked a lot why I'm still at a corporate nearly 6 years later, and I think that for me, I'm not well suited to corporate life. It's not a place that I naturally feel comfortable. But the reason for me that and in my role, what I find is that there are things that I can do that I could only do at the Boeing company. As you mentioned, the largest aerospace and defense company in the world, brings lots of opportunities, but also brings a significant amount of responsibility. And it's that responsibility to growing the aerospace ecosystem that really has created my role. And that's what I do for the Boeing company, is help us to nurture those aerospace or potential aerospace innovators right across the world.
Right. And so what's the relationship between Aerospace Xcelerated and Boeing? Because you have a pretty small team, so it almost might feel like a bit of a startup within a big corporate.
It does. Lots of days. It feels like the startup life. And we are a very small team, but we are spread right across the world. And for us, it's really that partnership is how we're able to really have the reach that we do. So we work with a lot of partners from the Boeing supply chain, from our customers, again, right across the world, which gives us that leverage to be able to reach all corners of the world, and find and support those innovators that have an interest in helping us grow the aerospace ecosystem.
Oh, amazing. And so what was the startup you were at before you made your way to Boeing?
It was a cyber intelligence startup in the UK.
Okay, so not aerospace.
No, not aerospace.
That's awesome. It's always interesting to hear how people wind up in the positions they're in, whether it's intentional or not. So what's your day-to-day kind of like? I know you travel around a lot, so it's probably extremely different. It might be a challenging question to answer.
Yeah, there's no regular day for me. As I mentioned, my team are based right across the world, so time zones are always a challenge for us as a team. There isn't a time that we can all actually jump on a call together that's sensible. So that's a real challenge balancing that. And I also, as you know, spend a lot of time traveling the world. I think it's really important, and it's really important for my team to actually get out there physically on the ground with people. There's no doubt that there's a lot that we can do remotely, but there's still no replacement for actually getting alongside our founders and really feeling what it's like to be in their position and their ecosystem, and understand what it is that we could do to really help them on their journey.
Right. And so would you say your team spends more time traveling to where your founders are, or that you don't really bring them to where you're typically based?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So we do spend a lot of time traveling out to them. We also spend a lot of energy trying to bring those founders together in a group. So just this week, we are at IDEX in Abu Dhabi, and we have our Cohort 4 founders here with us. It's actually the first time that we've met most of these founders in person. Wow. Because of the nature of the program and the geographical spread. So we have founders from Japan, from Australia, from the UK, wow. all here coming together and working together as a cohort, which is lovely to see. And also, them experiencing another market experiencing what it's like to work with one of our customers. So Tawazun Council are a partner in our program this year, and letting our founders see the real power that has whenever you have the OEM and the customer working together to try and help these founders and help them grow.
That's cool. So how many founders do you have there this week?
So there's 11 founders, or there's 11 teams, sorry, 11 startups in this cohort, and they're all represented out here this week.
Amazing. And so you mentioned cohorts. Like, how long is a typical cohort? You roll through a few a year. Is 11 like that? Is that kind of around the amount of teams you're looking to support at a time?
Yeah, so it's usually in and around the 10 number. Obviously this year they were just too good, so we had to take 11. So typically around the 10, we run a standard Accelerator 12-week program, and we run that January through March each year. We only do one a year at the moment. And that's really, for us, we're also looking at, what's really important to us is that follow on. The 12 weeks is great, and that's really, the baptism of fire. But really where our focus is how we help drive revenue to these companies, how we find those proof of concepts within the ecosystem, and really help them take that next step, whether that is a fundraise, whether it is, growing out the team and starting to help them plan for scale. It's that we're really focused on. The 12 weeks is what we've got to get through to get everyone to understand what they need, for us to understand the pieces of the puzzle that are missing, that they need help with getting, and start to put all of those things in place and really identify who the champions are within the Boeing company that are going to get behind these teams, and really ensure their success.
That's fantastic. Like, I feel like some accelerators, they don't really put an emphasis on that side of things. They've got their cohort, and then, they're just kind of, they're in and they're out, and they don't get that continued support. And it's difficult sometimes, when you have that cohort going through and they're used to being supported the entire time, and then they're kind of back out in the wild, and it's like, what do you do?
Yeah. And that's a real challenge, that's a real challenge for us now as well, with 41 companies having gone through the program so far. Someone once described them as 41 needy children. How do we help them all and provide them all with the support that they need as we're moving through that process. It's why, it's one of the reasons why the investment for us is really important, because that signals our commitment to these companies, not just for 12 weeks, but for the duration. We're in this with them, we're in aerospace, everything takes a lifetime. So, and that's who we are as a company. Boeing's been around for over 100 years. We understand what it takes to be successful, in this ecosystem. So for us, that commitment to the long term, but also the commitment to this being real, for us, and real for us that's revenue. That's actually being able to deliver for our customer. That's real.
Yeah, for sure. So what kind of tech readiness level are you typically working with? Like, are they just kind of ideation phase, prototype?
No. So I don't like to talk about tech readiness levels. And the reason that I don't is because at the Boeing company, that's a question I get asked all the time. And my answer is, you're missing the point. Because the point really is that these teams can go from ideation to ready for prime time very, very quickly, in a way that typical aerospace doesn't. So we have taken one company that we took into the program was 6 weeks old as a company when we made our investment. Others are significantly more mature and have been really successful in other segments or other sectors, like automotive, for example. So for us, that isn't a crucial factor. That's not what we look around. What we look around is the potential to be transformative in aerospace. And I know that's a hard thing to measure, and how we actually do that and select is by, again, it's not rocket science. We just bring together a huge group of people from across the ecosystem, and that's our Boeing champions, technical experts, that's business experts within the Boeing company, executives within the Boeing company, as well as from all of our partners. We effectively crowdsource the opinion. And then we as the venture team, we then look at it through the lens of, do we think this can actually make money? Do we think this can actually make a significant return on the investment? So when you marry those two things together, that's what you get when you see our portfolio.
That's cool. So like where and how do you find these organizations? Like it sounds like we obviously share a very similar mindset, that these ideas and innovations can be found all over the world, and sometimes the places you least expect it. And you're traveling all over, your team's traveling all over to find and support these organizations.
Yeah.
What's your approach to the discovery process?
So for us, it's really having the first kind of piece of that is having a really clear understanding of what are we looking for this year. And when I say that, it's about, we're really focused on what are we, the Boeing company looking for that we actually have budget assigned to doing something about in a relatively short window of time. Because that's key, because we don't want to be looking for things and talking to founders and wasting their time. We want to know that we actually have a need. This is something that we know we can move on this year. How are we going to do that? So that's the kind of the first key thing. Then we also talk to our partners from the same perspective, and we ask them to make commitments, not to us, but to those startup founders. So they will commit to budgets specifically for proof of concept activity with those teams around those problems if we find them. So that's the second piece. Then what we do is we go out to our network. So, 140,000 person company based right across the world.
Great starting point.
Yeah. And then it's all of the usual things. It's being present in the market, people knowing that we exist. Doing things like this really helps us raise the visibility of the program and help people understand what it is that we're about. Because I think that it's really important for a founder, when they're looking for the support that they need, understanding what each program offers, because they're all very different. Everyone runs on a very different model, or looking for very different outcomes from their programs. So making sure that you're getting into the right program for your startup, and more importantly than that, the right program at the right time. Because these things, the timing of when you actually take that step into a program like this, is really, really important. They're hugely time consuming. This is a huge commitment for our startup founders. And I really appreciate how much commitment they give to this, because if you come into this program and don't, go all in, it's just not going to work for you. And it's wasted. So, that for us is really kind of key in our selection as well. Do we think that the founders can really commit? And do we think that they actually have the time right now? Because we know that they're busy doing a million things, trying to grow their business. Is this the right timing for them?
Yeah. Well, that certainly makes a lot of sense, right? You don't want to have yourselves putting a lot on the line and investment into someone who's not going to reciprocate, the investment of time. I can certainly relate to the approach of the network effect. That's something we're very big on at HeroX, focusing on crowdsourcing. And we've ran a lot of aerospace challenges ourselves, and our network have some brilliant innovators that have provided some fantastic solutions on aerospace challenges. So if something happens where an innovator listens to this episode and they reach out to get into your accelerator, we're all going to have to get back to do another episode together.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So let's take a step back, because I know you mentioned, being in corporate was never a goal of yours. And obviously, we worked with some large companies as well, and we know how slow sometimes things can move, and the challenges that come along with being in corporate. How do you find navigating that when you're obviously trying to move quickly, innovation moves fast, and then you kind of deal with that slow paced mentality internally?
Well, I think that's the same, it's the same everywhere. It's the entrepreneurial mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, how do we find a way around it? How do we make it work for us? Coming up with different models. And I've been, ridiculously, fortunate at Boeing to be given the freedom to do that. For my leadership, it is go out and make it happen. Awesome. So my boss says to me that, for my team, it's, great, small teams do great things. That's what he always says, as he's, telling me I can't have any more headcount. But, it is a small team. And I think that there's a part of that that's also key to us. I think if I had a huge team, I don't think we would be as effective as we are today.
Right.
You know, there is, whilst I would love lots more people to help us with this, there is something quite special about having a small team that are really committed to the mission. And how I think we have been successful inside the Boeing company, which is a huge organization.
Yeah.
It has actually been just finding our people within the organization who also want to do these things, who are also really committed to that mission of driving, you know, the best innovation right forward to our customers. And
like, you mean kind of your champions within Boeing, kind of outside of your small team?
Exactly. So, you know, those people with that same sort of mindset that just want to get stuff done, you know, and that's what we've done. We have gone around the business and found those individuals that really believe in our mission, are entrepreneurial themselves, and are really, you know, and they do, once they start to, you know, meet our founders as well, you know what it's like. We kind of fall in love with them, and we just want to see them do well. And there's that whole kind of David and Goliath piece that happens, you know, who wouldn't for the little guy, you know, to do really well here. So there is a lot of that inside the company. Don't get me wrong, it's still hard work. There's still a lot of challenges, you know, and the company works in the way that it does for very good reasons. But it's how do we help drive some of this stuff? And that doesn't just happen inside the company. And what's been really exciting over this last sort of 18 months, and arguably the pandemic helped us in the sense that from our customer side, they're also saying, we just need this innovation. We need different ways of doing it. We need to think differently, and we need to move fast because we don't have time anymore. Time is not on our side. We need these solutions immediately. So that's a real, you know, that has been a real help to us. Whenever we have our customer coming alongside us and saying the exact same thing, and they're very aligned with what we're trying to achieve as well.
So do you find that pandemic push really made organizations a little bit more receptive to different ways of innovating, like being a little bit more open to open innovation?
Absolutely. And it's just been an absolute requirement. You know, in the environment that we all found ourselves in as a result of the pandemic meant that, you know, the world had entirely changed. You know, aerospace pretty much stopped. So and the financial pressures that all of us were under, we just had to think differently. We had to be more creative. So I think that has meant that, you know, everyone's doing things a little bit more differently, a little bit more creatively. And I think that it's been the fact that there was no choice. We had to do this in order to get things back up and running, because the way that we did things previously was just not relevant anymore. So it totally drove a different attitude and a different approach.
Yeah, well, I mean, just speaking to the pandemic, obviously it flipped many aspects of our lives and businesses completely upside down. But then you also look at, you know, the technology, I feel like since post-pandemic, that's just been exploding and affecting every business industry in one way or another. You know, you've got the virtual and augmented reality, you've got Web3 and crypto, and then all this craziness with AI going on right now. It's like, I feel like organizations are just kind of like, where do we go? What do we do? Like what's going on? And I really do believe that the best and most efficient way to do that is like open collaboration. You know, we see a lot more accelerator programs within large companies. We've also been a lot busier on the crowdsourcing side of things, tech scouting and things like that. Like, I just feel like traditionally organizations like to keep their cards really close to their chest and didn't want to, like, they just felt like it was bad if they sort of opened up. And now they're starting to realize that it's really the only way to move forward.
Yeah, and I think that there was a very you know, kind of firm, you know, across the aerospace community that we're all in this together, and we're all having the same problems. We're all facing the same challenges. And I think that's one of the things that we're really focused on, you know, through Aerospace Xcelerated as well, is building a community of innovators that the aerospace, OEMs, that the large organizations can really know and trust over long periods of time, because I think that's another piece that we're always going to be, a lot slower as a large organization. And obviously for us, it's a safety critical, highly regulated environment. But we need those innovators to have space to try and test and come up with these new ideas. But we also want to be sure that it's safe. So how do we do that? And I think that as we build out that, innovator community across the aerospace sector, they'll become more trusted. I know that even just in the 4 years that we've been running Aerospace Xcelerated, the reception that our founders and our startup engineers get from our Boeing engineers is very different now than it was 4 years ago. Because now they understand we've done all our research. We know who these guys are. They're tried and tested. Here's what they've done before. They've got track record, et cetera, et cetera. Not only that, but we put them through this program so they understand what we need. They understand our expectations and the limitations that we have at a company like Boeing. Right. They can be trusted. We can share what our real problems are. There doesn't need to be any, marketing spin put on this. Let's get in a room and have a real conversation and see how these guys can help us.
Your comment about the community really landed with me because, that's something we obviously do as well. Managing and maintaining and curating our crowd and community. What does that look like for your team? Do you just, obviously you have the cohort and then you have your additional support afterwards, but do you do anything beyond that to maintain that community engagement?
We do. So at the moment we're running one big kind of initiative a year, which is what we call our Aerospace Xcelerated Summit, where each year we bring all of our alumni founders together in a room, and we split that kind of day into, the first part of that day is a closed day where we bring all of our Boeing executives and partner senior teams in to meet with the founders, and we have a theme around that. So last year we had, the theme was really about internationalization and growth, and that was really all of our leaders who are out there in the field doing this for Boeing, sharing all of their where we're successful, where we're not, where we find it challenging. Here's what we have learned, in a really collaborative way, and pulling all those people together. The conversations, I'll tell you, are very, very direct, and quite, and they're pretty vulnerable. And it was last year, one of our engineering leaders came to me and said, Nick, I didn't realize how much these companies love us and really want to help us. I think there's sometimes a thought that they're the enemy. They're going to disrupt us. They're going to, and actually what he realized is that the relationships that we have personally built with all of these founding teams, that's where the secret sauce is in all of this. That's where the strength is, in having, really open and transparent relationships with our innovator community, and knowing that we're out to do what's best for them. We're out to really help them. And it's not just it's not transactional in that what does Boeing get out of this? And now Boeing are coming around and realizing that, wow, we actually get a community of some of the best innovators in the world. They just want to help us.
Wow. That's so incredible to hear, because, I feel like that's where a big hang up still is within organizations, and maybe not so much the high level execs, but some of the lower, the more frontline members of R&D teams. They're saying, why do we need this help? We can do things really internally, and they feel a little bit more threatened. And I feel like that's where a large roadblock still lies. And it's incredible to hear that your team has realized, after getting to know them, that that's just not the case, and that roadblock's just dropped.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it's dropped everywhere. It's important, but it's certainly,
for sure.
But we're certainly starting to see that, we're on the right path here. And there's so much that, across aerospace, not just with Boeing, we're all, in the same place where there's so much that we want to do. We can't do it all ourselves.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's where we have to work this out. How do we do this together? And what are the key pieces? That commercially we want to keep close. And what are the pieces of this that, that we can share out with the community, and sometimes come up with better solutions than we have. And that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know your team at Aerospace Xcelerated is stacked full of some very incredible women. And I know you're quite passionate about supporting and finding women-led and minority-led organizations. Can you share a little bit about your passion and why it lies there?
Sure. So yes, my the Boeing team at Aerospace Xcelerated is an all-female team, something I'm very proud of. And it's it's fantastic because it's not something that you see in aerospace. Aerospace, we don't get great representation historically, and for me, it's something that I'm super passionate about, to the point where we have a rule at the program, which is that any female founded team that gets in touch with the program, we meet with personally. And we also, as the applications come into the program each year, we do look through the female founded teams with a different lens. Yeah. And the reason that I say that is that of all the hundreds of applications that we've received over the years, and our experience of meeting the teams, female founders talk themselves down in these applications. And it's the same. We see this research everywhere about, male and female candidates and how they turn up differently. Yeah. So we take a really mindful approach to that and understand that, we work with all of the female founded teams that apply to the program to really try and make sure that we're seeing the full picture when it comes to selection. Because the selection process is very intensive. You're competing with 150 to 200 other applicants in there, and we work those down within a 6 to 8 week window. So it's a very, very tight turnaround for us, but we take this active effort with female founded teams because we know that that's a specific problem that we've seen through the application process. Right. And then the other thing that we did learn, again, another slight advantage to the pandemic, being that when we had to go fully virtual, because originally the program was an in-person program in London. When we had to go fully virtual and the next round of applications, we realized that we got significantly more applications from female founded teams whenever the program was fully virtual. So that's something we'll never walk that back. That's it. And we're never going to move from that position because we know we get an advantage there. So for us, that's really important, and it has resulted in year-on-year growth in the number of female founded teams that we pull through into the program, and that's really a testament, I think, to putting in that extra effort to look harder and make sure that we see the full picture before we make those decisions. Right.
That's a really interesting insight to the fact that they kind of talk themselves down in their applications, and that's fantastic that you do take that extra step to really understand if what that's coming across in the application is accurate or not. HeroX, we're not a female founded company, but our CEO is a female, and she's a minority as well, and she's incredible. I've worked at a few different startups and companies over the years, but this is definitely my favorite, and the culture she brings and the insights are fantastic. So I love that you're doing that. I think it's really important to be putting that emphasis today.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that, also within our program, we work with, so any female, so in that, not just from a founder status, but any of those employees that are around that startup at an early stage that are female. We also run a bit of a sub program underneath the main program around, okay, you're not the founder, why not? What is it how do we help? What is it that we need to do to help support you to think about yourself in that way? And we have those open conversations across the group to really understand what that is. And then we also spend time with the teams really thinking about how they are going to grow out that startup in a diverse and equitable way.
Oh, that's great.
So that, you know, so that's another piece of it that we do put effort and energy into, and we have seen fantastic results from that regard, with one of our male founders reporting to us that he's even prepared to pay more for female engineers because he believes that they're more productive in his business. So when you hear those sort of stories, it's like, this is actually having real impact. And that feels really great to see that.
Yeah, that's that's an unbelievable thing to hear. So I actually worked in international tech recruiting for a little bit, and you know, the female presence in those kind of job roles was obviously not as common. And you know, I worked with a number of companies that didn't quite say it as directly as you mentioned, but you know, they were actively saying, like, looking for, no, we need to get some more women on our software teams, and we're looking for minorities, and they're really looking for that diversity, because, you know, I think just having different people from different backgrounds, different you know, walks of life, different parts of the world,
it just makes it makes a better product, and you know, it makes a more robust product. And that's where I think that, you know, all of the research tells us that diverse teams perform better. Bottom line, and it does impact the bottom line. You know, it has a significant impact on the bottom line. So making that extra effort, I think it's very easy to say, oh, there are no women to hire, or, you know, I hear this all the time, we want the best candidate, we don't care what gender they are. And you're like, no, well, actually, if you hired someone diverse into that team, that makes them better. You know, because that will make your team better. And I think that, you know, I think we always have to think about what is the perfect team look like, particularly when we're talking about startups. You know, you hear any VC anywhere, they'll tell you what is the number one thing that they're looking for. It's the team. Yeah,
for sure. So touching back to, you know, delivering that more robust end product, like what's kind of on your roadmap right now? Are you able to share what's the main focus? So what technologies you are most excited about and looking to innovate around in 2023?
Yeah, so this year we have our cohort 4 chosen already for this year, and we're about halfway through the program, and that's all very focused around digital and digital services. So, you know, and that can be anything. So this year we have again have branched out a little bit further than we would usually. So, you know, typically we're when we say digital, you know, services or solutions, we're thinking about, you know, things that are going in the cockpit, or we're thinking about, you know, how do we make our production systems, you know, faster, better, more efficient, safer, all of those things. But this year as well, we've also brought in 2 teams that are focused around our people. And you know, teams that are thinking about psychological safety inside an organization like ours. One using VR and AR technologies, the other very AI focused. So I think that again shows that we're not just thinking about, everyone says, you know, everyone thinks the Boeing company, they typically think about going on holidays, flying on a nice plane to go somewhere nice and sunny. But remember, we're a 140,000 person company. So when you think of all of the digital services that we might need, you know, that's quite a large remit. So when we go out, we do have these, as I mentioned earlier, these specific things that we know we're actively looking for a solution for today. And a lot of those are based on things that we're delivering to a Boeing customer. But at the same time, we also want to see people that are coming to tell us things that we haven't thought of yet. You know, at the Boeing company, you know, you need to think about these things as well, that are how we run our business, not necessarily product out to the customer related. So we're always really keen to see both angles on that, those kind of enterprise technologies, as well as things that will just help us get our products to the customer more quickly and in a safe way.
So are you able to elaborate any more on what kind of like AI and augmented reality stuff you're using to reach those goals? Because I think, like, I'm really curious.
Yeah, sure. So so today our superstar of the show this week at IDEX has been AR Engineering, who are actually based here in Sharjah in the UAE, and they've just won the startup competition at IDEX. And they've got an AR solution, and what they're doing is actually helping our maintenance engineers on the ground actually understand what's happening inside that machine, whether it's the engine, for example, being able to access all of that training material and all of the historic data related to that part or product. So they're really able to actually do it live, not having to run back and forward or wait on someone else that did this last week. They're able to do all of that live and actually just become more efficient much more quickly. So those guys are great, and that's one of the things that we've tried. There's a lot of this stuff out there we've tried. You can imagine at the Boeing company we've tried lots of things to try and help us with this stuff, and never there isn't a silver bullet to any of this, but it's finding those applications in those specific areas, sometimes niche areas, to solve a problem for our customer right now, today. Because I think that a lot of people come in with, the idea, we're going to come into the Boeing company and we're going to deliver you this solution and it's going to be across all of your business and it's going to solve all of your problems. That's never going to happen. We are a large company, but there isn't one system that works across the business for anything. And that's just the reality of the complexity of the environment that we work in. So I think that's the key piece is there's always room for more, because we have so many parts of the business with so many different requirements, that it's very, very hard to have that, one size solution for every piece of the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with all these new technologies, and, I guess might be a little bit of a difficult question based on your comment of having so many different parts of the business, but, feel free to answer more so on wherever your main focus is. But with all these new technologies, in the next 5 to 10 years, like, do you have any vision, predictions, anything you'd love to see, like impacts you'd love to see innovation wise in the industry?
Yeah, so I think that again, I actually don't think that it's the technology that's the problem. I think it's the how. So for me, it's the technology, because we see in other sectors like automotive, we see that they are more advanced in terms of, for example, their production systems than aerospace is.
Right.
That because they're putting, obviously they're putting cars out at significantly higher production rates than we are for airplanes. And I know the safety level is somewhat different. So what that tells us is the technology is there. That's not the issue. It's the implementation of the technology and how we continue to iterate on that. And I think it's that piece, and going back to what we were talking about earlier about this open innovation type model. How do we make that relevant for aerospace and still be safe? That's the real challenge that we have. And this is why I genuinely believe, thinking about the model, how do we build a community of trusted innovators that we know they understand, the high levels of fidelity and safety that we need to meet in order to make this viable in aerospace. And the more that we can build out that community and build out the trust within that community and work out, the commercial piece, in my mind, should be simple. Once we have that trust there, how do we work out that co-collaboration, that co-development piece, so that all of our customers are getting the best technology as quickly as possible. And they're not having to wait 10 years for a cycle to go full circle for them to get something. To me, that's the holy grail. That's where we're trying to get to here.
That's that's a multi-component goal. There's a lot of working parts there that I hope come together to make that happen. As you mentioned, the technology's there, so it's just a matter of getting all the parts in order. I wish you luck with it.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, but I think,
Yeah.
As well, when you think about how the world is sort of changing as well, and the demands from our customer are changing, everyone's looking for localization. Our customers, 80% of our revenue comes from outside the United States. And all of our customers want to see that local element. They want to see where, how that's actually being grown in their economy, which is obviously key to everything that we do, is really how do we find that best technology, or how do we nurture an ecosystem locally to grow into the aerospace sector, and then how do we pull that through? So, for example, is the final end product that a customer gets in Japan going to be different than a final end product that a customer is going to get in the UK? It should be.
Yeah.
Right, because they want their local content, they want their nationally grown capability, right. And when we look at the defense world and how the environment from a defense perspective is going at the minute, everybody wants to know that they're safe in their own country. They have their own capability to keep their own population safe. So it's our job to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to help them grow that. And yes, as an OEM, we're there to glue it together for them and ensure the safety, ensure the fidelity of the system. But there's absolutely no reason why a lot of this capability cannot be grown, right at home for everyone.
Right. So you're really envisioning a little bit more of like localized communities for kind of around the world.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're on a fantastic track to do so. You're always on the go, hunting and discovering new organizations or new companies, startups, people, innovators, and building that network. So, I have no doubt in my mind you'll be able to make that happen. And if there's anything, we can do at HeroX to support you in your discovery process and finding, innovative people and building those communities, we're always happy to collaborate and help any way we can.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. It's going to take all of us, Adam, to work together.
Exactly.
And I think innovators everywhere, whether they're in aerospace or whether they're not, I think that it's a community, it's a community worth supporting. We've got so many challenges in so many different segments, and I think that, working out the model that supports innovators, and if that model that we're building works for another sector, we'll share everything with anyone that wants it. We don't hold anything close hold in that regard. We say this all the time. We'll share with you what our model is, how it works, what's worked for us, the mistakes we've made. We're always happy to share those things because there's so much work to get done, and we're never going to do it all. That vision's never going to be realized just with us doing this. So that's why a podcast like this is really important, to get the word out there and try to pull all of those like-minded people together to work together to try and achieve some of this.
Well, I couldn't agree more. That's a fantastic mentality to have, and I also think an even better spot to close this call. I've really enjoyed our time together. I think we share a lot of similar mindsets and visions. So this was a fantastic conversation, and I'll thank you again for your time. I really do hope we can find a way to work together in the future. I see a lot of collaboration opportunities. We're both really focused on community building, and I feel like there's something that we'll be able to do.
I'm sure we will.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone else who's tuning in for this insightful session. If you would like to follow the work that Nick's doing, you can find her on LinkedIn. Her profile will be in the description of the blog and as well in the description of the podcast. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn as well, or reach out anytime at possibilities@herox.com. Again, my name is Adam Olson, and I'm always happy to chat and continue these conversations online. Thank you for being part of the solution, and have a fantastic day.